There are 2 pencils, and so you might have to share, and there's pencils in each pew, so if you really need, you can grab to another pew. They're at the end. Okay, being the good teacher, I hope I've given you enough wait time to respond. Gil will know what I'm talking about, right, Gil? Wait time. All right, I was going to have you do something, and I don't know if I really want to carry this forth. What I was going to have you do is crush them up into a ball, and then we'd have a snowball fight in July and throw them around the... But I think we're going to hold on to them. Don't ball them up. I think we're going to hold on that. Just hang on to them. We'll refer back to them later, okay? And I promise you it won't be homework, as Gil was trying to pass out. I won't send home homework. But now, with a closer examination of these events as depicted in John's version of the miraculous occurrence, it reveals some clues as to the significant elements of the story. Different from the other versions, it is Jesus who first poses the question as to how the 5,000 should be fed. He asks Philip, "Where shall we buy the bread for these people to eat?" John then says that Jesus did this only to test him, and that he already knew what the solution would be. Andrew then volunteers that he is only aware of the 2 fish and the 5 small loaves of barley bread that were brought to the event by a young boy. Jesus then instructs them to have the 5,000 sit, and he took the bread and fish and gave thanks. Then his disciples distributed this meager offering. Can you imagine the curious looks and discomfort of the disciples as they heard the directions and began to carry them out? I was reflecting on, could you imagine the Mary Martha group being asked to serve a gathering of people here at Chaffin's with a mere pair of fish and 5 small loaves? They would not believe it could be done. And the gatherings here at Chaffin's don't even come close to numbers as large as 5,000. Right. Am I right? You ladies would be astounded and not happy with that. I can only imagine the amount of trust that the disciples had in their teacher to carry forth with such a daunting assignment. Examples of trust like that would be hard to find in the course of history. We humans tend to need a great deal of assurance before we're willing to risk our well-being, whether it involves our physical or emotional selves. This is demonstrated in a cartoon strip that tells of the experience of a young boy's first attempts to ride a bicycle. As it begins, the boy is clearly afraid and not sure he wants to ride that bike. His father says, "Trust me, okay?" Anybody been through this experience with your children? "Just trust me, okay?" The boy cries, "Trust you? I hardly know you." "I'm your father," the man emphatically asserts. And the boy fires back, "What? For 6 years? Call me when I'm 40 and we'll see how things are going." Luckily, the disciples had more trust in Jesus than the boy had in his father. As some might know, the task was even more impossible than was even stated in the text, because the crowd actually exceeded the 5,000 men that are mentioned. This was due to the fact that the Jewish Passover was drawing near, and the people would have been traveling as family groups to Jerusalem, where they were to observe this holiday. The reason the men were the only ones named was that the Jewish tradition forbade men and women to be seated together and to eat together. The women and children would have been seated in a separate area, removed from the main group. So, makes it even more amazing that there was leftover food from this meager offering. Furthermore, not only was there enough food to go around, the astounding thing was that there was such an abundance, that food was left over. Jesus specifically directs the disciples to collect the leftovers, that nothing should be wasted. In trying to go deeper into the principles of Christian faith being presented here, I began to study about what John explained was his purpose for writing about this and other miracles in his gospel. In his own words, he tells us, so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that believing in him, you will have life in his name. That's the whole purpose that John puts before us. So his stated purpose is simply to tell past, present, and future followers of Jesus who he was and what his mission is. At the very beginning of this book, John provides an answer to this question. And I will read for you the first chapter in John, 1 through 13. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. There came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all men might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or a husband's will, but born of God. Although we find these words and message rather puzzling, they would have been captivating to both Greek and Jewish readers of the day. Here he makes the connection for those people that Jesus is actually the divine, creative force behind the universe. It is through the rest of his gospel that he provides the proof and makes clear what Jesus intended for his followers to believe and live by. I believe that the evidence that John lays before us clearly demonstrates that the word that best fits as a description and purpose for Jesus is love. The sustenance that is provided reflects the infinite love that our Creator and Savior have for us. Throughout the Bible are examples of God providing for his people. We see this in the creation of Eden for Adam and Eve, the ark for Noah and his family, the deliverance of the Jews from Egypt, and the provision of manna as they traveled through the desert. The list could go on and on. The Old Testament provides this testament to help us set the stage, to allow Jesus to use these examples of God providing for his people as the model for his action. The parallels between God and Jesus' natures can be easily noted. In our own lives, we can frequently find ourselves lacking the trust that our faith will help to provide what we need, similar to the way that the disciples must have felt. Our needs are not just physical, as were demonstrated in this story. We often are plagued by doubt, fear, or worry regarding our families, our jobs, or even our own health. It can be easy to focus on what we know and believe through our intellect and earthly experience, and as a result, fail to turn to God for the fulfillment of these needs. Sometimes, I know myself, I have actually been angry when someone has approached me and tried to remind me of this. In fact, I have been outright dismissive and not willing to hear. When asked what the opposite of love is, we might respond automatically, hate. However, I suggest a better answer would be indifference. Our anger, that anger that wells up within me, keeps us engaged in our seeking and expecting love from God.